of the equator, midway between Hawaii and New Zealand, lies the Samoan archipelago. On its 9 inhabited islands, brown-skinned Polynesian people live in seaside villages where they fish the warm waters of the coral reefs and cultivate the rugged island slopes. To the west, the islands of the chain make up the independent nation of Western Samoa, and to the east, the islands belong to the United States and are known as American Samoa. On the island of Ta'u, the village of Fitiuta prides itself on its retention of Fa'a Samoa, the Samoan way. Today there is much activity along the beach and in the village coconut grove. There is copra to be cut. Several weeks ago, a hurricane swept across the islands and many houses were damaged. The Fitiuta village guest house, where all important visitors are entertained, was completely destroyed, and the people are anxious to see a new guest house of traditional design built as soon as possible. Carpenters are coming from Pongo Pongo, and there must be money to pay them. By harvesting the copra, their only important cash crop, the people of Fitiuta will be able to finance the construction of the house. One young man climbs a coconut palm to cut fronds, which will be woven into carrying baskets to hold the oil-laden coconut meat after it is removed from the shell. The removal of the kernel from the nut is an operation taking place in the thatch-covered boathouse on the beach. Here, shaded from the hot tropical sun, the chiefs are assembled to contribute their labor to the village enterprise. Everyone works, even 2 blind chiefs who work nearly as efficiently as the rest, remembering their youth when they sat for long hours, sliding the knife between the meat and the shell, skillfully extracting long curls of moist white kernel. The work goes on through the whole day. By evening, so many baskets have been filled that they are difficult to count. The chiefs know that the copra will bring more than enough money to pay the carpenters, soon to arrive on the inter-island boat. When the villagers return to their homes, each will carry several of the baskets. For many days to come, the girls of each family will spread the coconut meat out in the sun to dry, so it will be ready to send to Pongo Pongo when the boat arrives. There is great excitement in the village when the inter-island boat arrives with the carpenters aboard. The long boat is sent out to bring them ashore. There are also passengers leaving for Pongo Pongo and the valuable sacks of copra. On the shore, the people watch, for the passage through the narrow channel in the reef is always difficult, and many boats have overturned in the surf. The carpenters will stay for several weeks, and there is much to be unloaded. Tools, personal belongings, and most important of all, the carpenter's gift to the village, a large pig. After the carpenters have been settled in quarters provided by the high chief, they are summoned to the village council house to be officially welcomed with a kava ceremony. In the center of the house, the son of the high chief prepares the yellowish liquid made from the powdered root of the Piper methysticum plant. A fiber strainer is used to remove the bits of root that do not dissolve. When the talking chief judges that the kava is ready, the first cup is taken to the honored guest of the day, the chief carpenter, Tufunga. Tufunga's speech of thanks is formal and eloquent. He asks God to bless the village and the work that will soon begin. Then he says soifua, and as he drinks, the chiefs answer manuia. Now it is time for the giving of the gifts, which serve as a down payment for the work. The finest gift of all is an iatanga, a fine mat woven from the inner bark of the hibiscus bush. The carpenters are grateful, and an apprentice is sent out of the house to announce to the village the list of gifts which have been received. He praises the generosity of the people and states that the workmen are pleased. In another part of the village, Va'alele and his family are preparing food for the carpenter's evening meal. Each family will take its turn cooking for the workmen, for part of the payment for the guest house consists of the best of food for the carpenters during their stay. The hair is singed and removed with a knife. The carcass is rubbed with the fruit of the papaya to give the meat good flavor and to make it tender. The abdominal wall is cut away. It will be cooked separately in leaves and sent to the village princess, the taupo. After the animal is stuffed with papaya leaves, it is placed on a circle of hot stones, covered with damp leaves and left to cook for an hour. Now a basket must be woven to hold the pig and the other foods, such as taro, breadfruit, and bananas, which will comprise the food gift. After only an hour, the pig is not thoroughly cooked, but there will be enough well-done meat for a good evening meal for the guests. The rest will be recooked on the following day. The next morning, the carpenters go into the bush to secure the proper timbers. They then begin to fashion the curved purlins, the rafters, the wall plates, and the ridgepole. Sometimes many pieces of wood must be spliced together to obtain the proper curve for the end sections of the roof. No nails or pegs are used in the construction. Instead, thousands of fathoms of senet are used to lash the many parts together. Senet is a twine made from the fibers in the husk of the coconut. The unit of measurement of the twine is the fathom, or 6-foot length. The eave batten is the final part to be added before the roof is thatched. It is lashed in place and the edge of the roof trimmed. The work of the carpenters is of great interest to everyone, but the villagers have their own work to do. Talangu goes to the reef to test the new throwing net, which he has just finished making. A school of brightly colored reef fish is spotted, and he swings the net and throws it so that it spreads out in a circle, imprisoning a dozen or more small fish. The fish will be a welcome addition to their normally vegetable diet. Each will be carefully wrapped in leaves and baked in the Samoan oven. Even the eyes and the heads will be eaten. After returning from the reef, Talangu begins the preparation of palusami, the dish sometimes referred to as Samoan cabbage. First, coconut must be grated. Later, it will be squeezed in a strainer to produce coconut cream, an important ingredient in the recipe. Meanwhile, Fanua, Talangu's wife, busies herself with another cooking chore, the peeling of green bananas, which will be baked in the Samoan oven. Talangu prepares a giant taro by removing the tough outer skin with a bush knife or machete. Now the umu, or Samoan oven, must be prepared. It is merely a pile of round stones which will be heated until they glow. After the fire has burned for an hour, the charcoal will be brushed away and the heated rocks will be spread out flat. The food will be placed on this hot surface. Rocks from around the edge will be placed on top to ensure that the food will be well cooked. While waiting for the oven to heat, there is much for the family to do. Langu scrapes the rind from a large breadfruit, and Talangu selects the tenderest of taro leaves for the palusami. After the leaves are filled with coconut cream and baked on the fire, they will taste like spinach with a coconut flavor. To convert the grated coconut into cream, all that is required is a strainer made from the husk of the banana tree and the strong muscles of Sao, Talangu's eldest son. Now Talangu carefully ladles out the coconut cream. He pours it into the taro leaves cupped in his hand and makes a tight little bundle by wrapping them in a breadfruit leaf. By forcing the stem of the breadfruit leaf under a vein, he makes sure that the bundle will not come apart during the cooking. The hot stones of the oven produce a steaming meal within an hour's time. Many Samoans prefer to eat their food cold, and therefore cook their evening meal early in the afternoon.
Sufa tailo lofa ina o e taitaina I mātou whaatasi le ne yasa. O me whaletino o e whaai o le ai mawheinu I mātou ai vi I ailo swafa Yesu. Amen.
Talangu and his family would not think of eating a bite of food until they had said their Whawhetai, thanks to God. The family sits cross-legged on the floor and are served by the two oldest boys. Their trays are coconut fronds. Their dishes are leaves. Mother and father are served first, but there is plenty for everyone. While no knives and forks are used, there is a polite way of eating with one's fingers. Talangu and Whanua insist that their children observe the proper manners. Samoans are a very clean people, and at the end of every meal, water is brought so that the hands might be washed. Talangu knows that the village guest house will be completed in a few weeks, and he would like to be able to give the carpenters a very special food gift before they leave. Whanua's father has suggested that they make a masi pit, as masi is considered a great delicacy among Samoans, and very few people care to go to all the work it takes to produce masi these days. Masi is decomposed breadfruit that has been buried in the ground for several weeks. First, a pit must be dug and lined with newly woven coconut leaf mats. Then dozens of breadfruit must be scraped and placed in the pit. The mass of breadfruit will be carefully covered with banana leaves and then with earth. When the pit will be opened again in several weeks, the decomposed breadfruit, smelling much like very old cheese, will be cut out in squares and eaten as is, or baked in the oven. In old Samoa, masi pits were insurance against crop failure or other forms of natural disaster. Sometimes the pits would not be open for several years. Talangu plans to open the pit just before the carpenters are ready to leave for home. He will add sugar to the squares of masi and bake them in the oven. And then they will taste very much like cake. Each of the men will be given one of these breadfruit cakes. It will be a rare gift indeed. Whanua is also thinking of the day when the carpenters will complete their work and be given gifts by all the families of Pitiuta. She would like to present them with several fine tapa cloths. She asks a neighbor to help. First, the inner bark of the paper mulberry tree is separated from the tough outer covering. Clam shells are given sharp edges so that they will scrape away the green-colored matter and the coarser portions of the bark. A number of thin strips of bark are soaked in water, scraped and laid aside. Several of the strips are bundled together and pounded with a hardwood beater. This causes the fibers to mesh and become a single sheet. The sheet of bark cloth becomes wider and thinner. The sheets of cloth are damp from the earlier soaking and must be spread to dry. There are sometimes holes in the bark cloth fiber which must be patched. Arrowroot starch is used to cement the patches to the cloth. Arrowroot is also applied to the design board so the cloth will not slip while the pattern is being brought out. These design boards are carved by the men of the society, but only women produce the decorative tapa cloths which are referred to as siapo. A dye extracted from the bark of the oa tree is applied with a bark cloth brush to the white fiber that has been laid across the board. The pressure applied during this rubbing brings out the design of the board underneath. After one section of the cloth has been printed, it is folded over and another section is glued onto the edge with arrowroot starch, and the new section is then decorated. Tapa cloths usually measure about 4 feet by 6 feet, and many printings of the design are required. Most families have but one design board, so they add variety to the tapa cloths by painting additional designs on them, with a much darker dye after the board printings have been completed. At one time, cloths like these were used for clothing, but today they are valuable pieces of personal or family property. They are often used in gift exchanges at weddings, funerals, or as payment to carpenters for work well done. And indeed, the work has been well done. The final unit of thatch has been lashed in place and mats cover the newly laid pebble floor. The simple, clean lines of the house are the same as those first created by their ancestors hundreds of years ago. The day for celebrating the completion of the guest house has arrived, and there will be dancing and feasting all day. The young men of the village perform a sasasiva, the traditional type of dance where all the dance movements must be performed in unison. After the group dancing, the age-old Samoan knife dance is performed to honor the occasion. The village ceremonial princess, the taupo, complete with traditional headdress, appears with her handmaidens, the members of the aoluma, or Society of Unmarried Women. The dancing will go on far into the night. Tomorrow the inter-island boat will arrive and the carpenters will return to Pago Pago. The people of Fitiuta now have a fine new guest house, and most important, the whole task was accomplished according to Samoa, the Samoan way.